The day my brother humiliated me was the same day we buried our father. My name's Daniel Ward, 46, construction foreman for Ward and Sons Contractors, or what used to be that. My father built the company from nothing, poured foundations in Texas heat until his back broke, taught us both how to hold a level before we could drive. He named it after his boys, but only one of us ever acted like the name meant something. The funeral was held in the Baptist church we'd been dragged to every Sunday as kids. Rows of suits, flowers, clients, and cousins who barely remembered Dad's voice. My younger brother Evan, dressed in a black tailored suit that screamed money, delivered the eulogy like a campaign speech. Dad taught us that some people are meant to lead, he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd before locking on me. And some are better off taking orders. Laughter rippled from the front pew, polite, nervous laughter, until it died under the echo of his next words. Daniel's good with his hands, always has been, but Dad knew the business needed a different kind of brain to survive. I felt every eye shift toward me. My mother lowered her gaze. Evan smiled, satisfied. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the casket and counted my breaths like nails hammered into wood. After the service, he shook hands with contractors and city officials, introducing himself as the new CEO. I stood a few feet away, still holding Dad's folded work gloves. When he reached me, he leaned close enough that I could smell the cologne he'd bought with company money. "Don't take it hard, Danny," he murmured. "Dad was proud of you. He just knew you weren't leadership material." I could have hit him. Instead, I smiled. "You're right," I said. "I build things. I don't pretend to own them." He laughed, clapped my shoulder, and walked off to pose for a photo with our mother and the board members of a company he'd only managed on paper. That night, while everyone else went to the reception, I drove to the old office on McKinney Avenue. The lights were off, the parking lot empty. Dad's desk still smelled like cedar and sweat. On the top drawer, beneath a pile of invoices, I found a sealed envelope marked in my father's handwriting, to be opened only if they forget who built it. I stared at the familiar slant of the letters until my hands stopped shaking. Then I turned off the lamp, locked the door behind me, and whispered to the dark. They just remembered. The funeral humiliation was just the opening act. Evan made sure of that. 2 days later, he called a company transition meeting at the Ward and Sons headquarters, a squat red brick building our father had built himself in, 92. I walked in wearing my work clothes, jeans still dusted with drywall and steel-toe boots that had seen more honest sweat than Evan's entire wardrobe. He was already seated at Dad's old desk, talking to 2 board members like he'd been born behind mahogany. A gold pen spun between his fingers. "Dan," he said without looking up, "glad you could make it." I sat down across from him. The desk was too clean, no plans, no invoices, just a folder labeled restructuring. He opened it with theatrical precision. "You've been foreman here 12 years, good work, loyal, dependable, but you know how times change." "Cut the preamble," I said. "What's this really about?" Evan smiled like a man about to sell you your own truck. "Dad's will appointed me as managing director. You'll stay on payroll as site consultant. That means a 40% pay reduction and no signing authority." I laughed, short and ugly. "So after all this, you're demoting me?" "Not demoting, refocusing your skill set. You build, I lead." I leaned forward. "You've never poured a footing in your life. You think leadership's a title you buy?" He didn't flinch. "I think leadership is about image. Clients don't want a guy covered in concrete dust negotiating contracts." They want someone who looks like they belong in a boardroom. I stared at him, speechless for a second. The two board members shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Then Evan reached for his tablet and turned the screen toward me. "Here's the new org chart. You'll report to you," I said flatly. "To the company, Daniel." I stood up. "The company was Dad. The company was us. You just turned it into your reflection." He sighed, closing the tablet. "You're taking this personally." "It is personal." He smiled that thin politician's smile. "Then maybe it's time you remembered where you came from. Without me streamlining the business, you'd still be fixing fences in the yard. You want to know what Dad told me before he passed?" I didn't answer. He said, "Evan's got the head. Daniel's got the hands. Don't confuse the two." The lie landed like a slap. I walked out before I said something I couldn't unsay. Out in the parking lot, heat shimmered off the asphalt. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. That night, my pay deposit didn't show up. Neither did the overtime bonus I'd earned finishing the Pasadena contract. When I called payroll, the accountant whispered, "I'm sorry, Dan. Evan told us to route approvals through him now. Your file's under review." Under review. By the next morning, my company phone was disconnected. My email access revoked. At lunch, I stopped by one of our sites, the Highway 59 project, and found the crew avoiding eye contact. Evan had been there earlier, spinning stories. "He said you were stepping back," my lead hand mumbled. "Said you're burnt out." "Did he?" I said quietly. That night, Mom called. "Evan says you're making things difficult." "I'm asking for what's mine. Daniel, please. He's doing what your father wanted. You need to support him." "Did Dad ever tell you that? Or did Evan?" She hesitated. "Don't drag family business through the mud." "Too late," I said, and hung up. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that envelope I'd found at the office. The handwriting was unmistakable. Dad's neat cursive that always leaned right, like it was already chasing the next job. I tore it open. Inside was a folded letter and a notarized document stamped June 12th, 3 months before he died. The letter said, "If you're reading this, Daniel, it means the company forgot who built its foundation. You have the authority to audit every account, every sale, every name attached to Ward & Sons. If any man, family or not, uses my name for profit over pride, stop him." Signed, Thomas Ward. The amendment named me sole executor of the estate until all audits were complete. Evan's title meant nothing without my signature. I leaned back in my chair, the humiliation of that funeral still burning in my chest. But now it had a purpose. "You wanted leadership, little brother," I muttered. "You're about to get it." By the end of that week, I learned what it felt like to vanish without dying. Evan moved fast. He called every supplier, every client, every foreman I'd ever trained. Told them I'd stepped away for health reasons. Told them to send all payments and communications through his new office email, ceo@wardansons.com. By Friday, my name was scrubbed from the company website. The section that once read, "Founded by Thomas Ward and sons Daniel and Evan," now said simply, "Led by CEO Evan Ward." I drove to the main site that morning to clear my locker. My old crew barely looked up when I walked in. One of them, Luis, muttered, "Boss said we can't talk about internal issues." I forced a smile. "It's okay, boys. Just getting my tools." But when I opened the locker, the padlock had been changed. Evan's doing. At the hardware counter, the clerk who'd known me 15 years suddenly didn't recognize me. "Sorry, Mr. Ward, but Evan said all purchases go through central approval now." "Even mine?" He shrugged, awkward. Company policy. I walked out with empty hands and an ache in my chest that had nothing to do with money. That night, my phone started buzzing. Texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Heard you're suing your own brother. Your father would be ashamed. You've always been jealous of Evan. One message hit harder than the rest. From Mom. You need to stop before this family can't be fixed. I typed a dozen replies and deleted them all. The next morning, I drove to our father's grave. It was still fresh, soil uneven where the grass hadn't taken root. I stood there with a thermos of black coffee, watching steam curl into the cold air. I'm trying to do what's right, Dad, I said quietly. But everyone you taught to trust me just turned their backs. Wind moved through the cemetery pines like whispering voices. Maybe that was an answer. By Monday, Evan had frozen my access to the company accounts. When I called the bank, the manager said, "We can't discuss business holdings without the acting director's consent." "I am the executor," I said. She sighed. "Then bring documentation." So I did. I showed up in person with Dad's notarized amendment. The manager read it, frowned, and said, "I'll need to verify this with legal." The next day, she called back. "Our legal team confirmed it's authentic, but Mr. Evan Ward has already moved all corporate funds to a new account, one not under your father's estate. We're frozen until we get a court order." Evan had anticipated me. That night, I found a post on LinkedIn, his post, featuring a photo of him shaking hands with a city councilman under the caption, "Honored to continue my father's legacy while my brother enjoys a well-earned retirement." Thousands of likes, comments from clients, praise for his leadership. I scrolled until my eyes blurred. Then I shut the laptop and stared at the letter Dad had written me. The ink had started to fade where my thumb rested, but the signature still burned clear. Evelyn, my late wife, used to say, "People show you who they are when there's money on the table." Well, Evan had flipped the whole table. The next morning, I went to the courthouse to file for an injunction, but the clerk said, "Sir, your brother already submitted an affidavit claiming you're emotionally unstable since your wife's death. Any filings from you will need mental evaluation clearance." I just laughed. Loud enough that people turned. It wasn't madness. It was realization. Evan was building a wall of perception around me, painting me as the broken one. Fine. Let him, because walls are funny things. They keep people out, but they also trap the ones who build them. And I had every intention of watching that wall fall, brick by forged brick. I learned the hard way that truth doesn't matter until it's written down and notarized. The more I stayed quiet, the louder Evan became. He started giving interviews, local news, business podcasts, even a segment on Houston Business Weekly. "My brother stepped back to grieve," he told the host with a smooth smile. "Dad trusted me to modernize Ward & Sons. I'm just honoring that vision." The clip went viral in our circle of clients. I watched it in my kitchen with a beer going flat in my hand. The headline under his face read, "Evan Ward, the new generation of family leadership." My father's name wasn't mentioned once. That night, I drove to the office again. But this time, I didn't go in through the front. The maintenance key still worked on the back door. Dad had given it to me when I was 18. Inside, the air smelled of copier toner and new carpet. Evan had replaced the old blueprints on the wall with framed motivational quotes. I went straight to the storage room. The file cabinets were labeled neatly, but one drawer had a tag I'd never seen before. Legacy box. It was locked. I pulled the drawer handle hard enough to snap it. Inside were Dad's old recordings, cassette tapes from the early 2000s, his way of documenting bids and instructions before smartphones. I took the whole box home. Half the tapes were routine, project logs, supply notes. But one, dated June 10th, stopped me cold. The label read, Estate Meeting. I found my old tape player, popped it in, and listened. My father's voice came through rough but clear. If either of my boys ever puts pride before the work, this company dies with me. Daniel knows how to build. Evan knows how to talk. But the one who forgets the other doesn't deserve the name Ward. Then another voice. My father again. Quieter. Like he was talking to the notary. I'll file the amendment this week. Daniel gets full executor rights if I go first. Evan's got too much flash, not enough footing. There it was. The missing heartbeat of the will. Proof. I sat back, hands shaking. Then I hit record on my phone, transferred the audio to digital and labeled it, Dad's Real Words. By sunrise, I had a plan. The next day, I met with Angela Cruz, a local business reporter I'd worked with years ago when our company built the new Civic Center. She remembered me. Dan, I saw that podcast. Didn't seem like your brother gave you much credit. Because he's hiding something, I said, sliding the tape recording and the notarized amendment across her desk. He forged statements, moved funds, and rewrote my father's story. I want the truth printed before he sells off the company name. Angela listened, frowning. This is heavy, but if the documents check out, I'll run it. Run it with the recording, I said. Let the town hear Dad's voice again. She nodded. Give me 48 hours to verify. 2 days later, Evan called. You think you're clever, don't you? His voice was low, controlled. You've been talking to reporters. Angela called me for comment. I just gave her facts. You're about to regret it. Defamation isn't cheap. You're right, I said. Neither is fraud. Silence on the line. Then he hissed, You don't know who you're dealing with, Daniel. I do, I said, and so will everyone else by morning. That night, the article went live. Ward legacy in question. Audio suggests forgery and family business. Angela had uploaded the recording. My father's gravelly voice played through speakers across Houston before sunrise. By noon, the company's social media was flooded with comments. Did Evan fake his father's approval? Where's Daniel? Ward and Sons, or just Ward? The clients started calling. Not me, but the office. The receptionist quit by 3 p.m. Evan released a statement calling it edited audio fabricated by a disgruntled former employee. But that only made things worse. At 6 p.m., Angela uploaded part 2 of her report, certified documentation from the county clerk's office proving the amendment's legitimacy. The internet did what it always does, picked a side, and for once it picked mine. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Meet me tomorrow at 9. I have something you'll want to see. A. It was Angela. When I met her the next morning at the diner, she slid me a printed spreadsheet. Your brother moved $480,000 from the business account into a shell company called Ward Innovation Group. The LLC address, his condo. I stared at the numbers. Proof again. This time in bank ink, not sentiment. Angela leaned forward. If you want to take him down for good, you'll need one more thing, a witness who saw him do it. I already have one, I said. Dad. By Monday morning, the rumor had become wildfire. The recording wasn't just circulating in town. It was climbing into contractor forums, union boards, LinkedIn feeds. Every time someone replayed my father's gravelly voice saying Daniel gets executor rights, Evan's empire cracked a little more. I thought exposure would be enough. I was wrong. At 9:30 a.m., I got a call from our main supplier, Rockland Materials. "Mr. Ward," the rep said carefully, "we just received a stop payment notice from your company account. Evans said the firm's under internal audit and all pending orders are frozen." "Frozen?" I repeated. "You mean the steel for the Galveston Pier contract?" "Yes, sir. 200 tons of reinforcement. We can't release it until payment clears. That shipment was due on site the next day. Delay meant breach of contract, a $600,000 penalty clause." I hung up and drove straight to the office. The parking lot was half empty, blinds drawn. Inside, the receptionist's desk was abandoned, papers scattered. Evan's office door was locked. Through the glass, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear, face pale. He hung up when I opened the door. "You can't just walk in here, Dan." "I'm the executor. I can walk wherever I damn please." He forced a laugh. "Executor? Please. That was Dad's old paperwork. You had Angela forge half of it." "Funny," I said, "because the county clerk verified every line. And now, thanks to your little freeze stunt, we're about to default on the Galveston contract." He sank into his chair. "I'm containing fallout. Investors are nervous." "Investors?" I repeated. "You mean the people you paid with company money through Ward Innovation Group?" He froze. I tossed the spreadsheet Angela gave me onto his desk. "LLC filed under your condo address. 480 grand transferred without board approval." "Tell me, little brother, was that part of Dad's modernization plan too?" "Those were R&D funds," he snapped. "For expansion. You wouldn't understand. You've always been stuck in the mud." "Then why is the state business registry showing that Ward Innovation Group owns no patents, no contracts, and no staff?" He stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. "You think you can come in here and humiliate me after everything I've built?" I laughed, one sharp sound that made him flinch. "Everything you've built was poured on foundations I mixed with Dad 20 years ago." Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. "Angela," I answered on speaker. "Dan, the bank just filed a preliminary fraud alert on your accounts. Evans' transfers flagged as suspicious. They're freezing all Ward & Sons assets until investigation concludes." Evans' face went paper white. You told them?" "I didn't have to," I said. "The numbers told themselves." Angela continued, "They're scheduling an emergency board hearing tomorrow morning. The investors want answers. Bring your documentation." "Got it," I said, and hung up. Evans sank into his chair again, muttering, "You've ruined everything. You think you can run this company? You can't handle pressure. You'll choke." I leaned across the desk. "You already did." He grabbed a whiskey bottle from the drawer, poured himself a glass with shaking hands. "You think anyone's going to believe you? Half the family already hates your guts." "Maybe," I said, "but the rest of the city's listening to Dad's voice." He laughed bitterly. "You always wanted him to love you more. This isn't about justice, it's about approval." "Maybe it started that way," I admitted. "But now it's about truth on paper. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Tomorrow, you get to experience the same stage lights." He threw the glass. It shattered against the wall, amber spreading like a stain. I didn't flinch. "Careful, brother," I said quietly. "Cameras love drama." Because I'd left my phone recording the entire conversation, time-stamped, clear, uncut. When I got home, I sent the audio to Angela and the board's legal counsel. Then I poured myself a drink, the same brand Dad used to favor, and stared at the ledger I'd started keeping since his death. Assets recovered. Zero truth recovered. 1. At 7 o'clock the next morning, my doorbell rang. A courier handed me a sealed envelope marked Emergency board summons. Inside was a printed agenda. Fraud investigation review. Financial freeze implications. Proposal for new acting director. I smiled. By noon, I walked into the conference room where the company's most important names sat stiff as marble. Evan was already there, red-eyed, tie loose. The chairman cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, we have an issue. Mr. Daniel Ward has presented evidence that requires discussion." I set down the envelope Dad had left me. The amendment, the notarized document, and a flash drive labeled Dad's recording. "This company was built on my father's back," I began, "and it's being buried by my brother's greed. Play the file." The room fell silent as Dad's voice filled the speakers again. That gravelly tone every man in that room had once feared and respected. "Daniel gets full executor rights if I go first. Evan's got too much flash, not enough footing." When the audio ended, the chairman turned to Evan. "Well?" Evan's mouth opened, then shut. I placed one more sheet on the table. The bank's fraud notice confirming $480,000 wired to his private LLC. The chairman sighed. "We'll convene in private." I stood. "Take your time, I'll wait." When they dismissed us, Evan leaned close, whispering, "You think this is over? I'll drag you down with me." I smiled. "Then bring a shovel, brother. You'll need it." The next morning, the board reconvened. This time, Mom was there. Evan must have begged her to attend. She sat near the end of the table, small and trembling, clutching her purse like it contained the last thread of peace between her sons. The chairman opened. "We've reviewed preliminary evidence of financial misconduct. Mr. Daniel Ward, please present your full case." I stood, opened my folder, and let the papers fan across the mahogany like cards in a rigged game. Each sheet carried a date, a signature, or a number that built a noose around my brother's neck. "First," I said, "the notarized amendment filed June 12th by my father, granting me executor authority." I slid it forward. "Second, bank documentation showing unauthorized transfers to Ward Innovation Group, an LLC registered to Evan Ward's private residence. Third, the audio of our father's voice confirming his intent." Evan's attorney, a thin man who looked like he hadn't slept, stood. "These documents could be fabricated. Audio can be edited." "Then let's listen," the chairman said. I pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room, weary but steady. "If either of my boys ever puts pride before the work, the company dies with me. Daniel gets full executor rights if I go first." The sound hit like thunder. Every man at that table had known my father. None mistook that voice. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She whispered, "Oh God, Tom." When the clip ended, I played another. The recording from Evan's office 2 days earlier. His own voice, cold and arrogant. "You think anyone's going to believe you? Half the family already hates your guts." Gasps rippled through the room. I looked directly at him. "Still think nobody's listening, brother?" Evan shoved back his chair. "This is entrapment," he barked. "You all think this company runs on dirt and sweat? It runs on reputation. My reputation." The chairman's gavel slammed once. "Sit down, Mr. Ward." He didn't. He turned to Mom. "Tell them, Mom. Tell them Dad never wanted him in charge." Mom shook her head, voice breaking. "I heard your father say those same words before he went into the hospital. You just didn't want to listen." Silence dropped heavy. The chairman cleared his throat. "Based on evidence provided, this board votes to remove Evan Ward from all executive duties, effective immediately pending criminal review." Evan's face collapsed. Wait, you can't. Security will escort you, the chairman said. Mr. Daniel Ward will assume interim leadership as executor of the estate. 2 guards appeared at the door. Evan's bravado cracked. He lunged toward me, eyes blazing. You think this is justice? Dad always pit us against each other. He made you small. I stepped aside as security restrained him. Maybe, I said quietly, but I grew up anyway. They dragged him from the room. The slam of the door felt like a gavel strike to the heart. When it was over, the chairman extended his hand. Congratulations, Mr. Ward. You've restored your father's legacy. I looked at Mom. She stood slowly, walked to me, and pressed something into my palm. Dad's old pocket knife. The one he'd carried every day of his life. He gave this to me after you boys started fighting, she said softly. He told me, when the day comes that one son saves the name, give him this. I think it's time. I turned it over, the worn initials carved into the handle TW. For the first time in months, my throat tightened not from anger, but from release. Outside the boardroom, reporters were already waiting. Flashes went off like lightning. One shouted, Mr. Ward, any comment on your brother's removal? I met their cameras and said, my father taught me that men can rebuild anything, except their word. Today we fixed ours. The next morning's headline read, Ward and Sons cleans house. Executor exposes $480K fraud. Evan's mugshot ran beside it. Eyes hollow, jaw clenched. The article quoted my statement word for word. Back at the ranch house, Mom watched the news in silence. When the segment ended, she turned to me. Your father would have been proud. I looked out the window at the sunrise burning over the steel yard and whispered, so am I. 3 days after the board meeting, I drove out to Mom's house, the same brick bungalow where Evan and I used to race bikes until Dad yelled from the porch. The air smelled of rain and cut grass. She was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red but calm, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. The news had already spread. Evan charged with wire fraud and corporate theft, his accounts frozen, his name stripped from every contract. I stood in the doorway for a while before speaking. You eating anything? She shook her head. Can't keep much down. I sat across from her. The silence between us wasn't cold, just heavy, like 2 people sitting on the same wreckage trying to decide which way was shore. Do you hate him? She asked finally. I don't know, I said. Part of me wants to, the rest of me's just tired. She stared into her coffee. He's my son too, Daniel. I know. He called from county jail. Said you set him up. I sighed. No, Mom. He set himself up. I just stopped pretending I couldn't see it. Tears welled in her eyes. You 2 were all your father and I had. I kept hoping one day you'd forgive each other. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, I said quietly. If I forgive him, it's because I want peace, not because he earned it. She looked up then, studying my face the way only a mother can. And do you have peace? I thought of the long nights after the funeral, the humiliation, the way Evan had looked down on me in front of a church full of people. I thought of Dad's voice on that recording, calm and certain, giving me the one thing I'd never had from him before, trust. Yeah, I said finally, I do. She nodded, wiped her tears, and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Then maybe that's enough. We sat there for a long while, listening to the storm fade outside. Lightning flickered once across the sky, followed by a low roll of thunder that felt more like a heartbeat than a warning. When I left, I stopped by the cemetery. The grass had finally taken root over Dad's grave. I placed the old pocket knife on the headstone, blade closed. "Balance sheet's clean, Dad," I whispered. "Even the debt you left between us." The wind moved softly through the oaks, bending the branches without breaking them. For the first time in months, I felt the same way. I turned back toward the truck, rain settling into mist around me, and let the past stay where it belonged, under the ground, with the man who built the name we'd both tried to live up to. 6 months later, the sign above the new workshop finally went up. Ward Restoration and Steelworks. No Ock & Sons, no legacy names, just mine. The first time I saw it in the morning light, I stood on the gravel drive with a coffee in one hand and Dad's old pocket knife in the other. The wind smelled like rust and cedar, the same scent that used to cling to his jacket. I didn't build the company to erase what happened. I built it so I'd never again have to ask someone else for permission to do what's right. Word spread fast through Houston's contracting world. Clients I'd known for years, the ones who'd gone silent during Evan's takeover, started calling again. "Dan, heard you're running your own shop now. Need a reliable foreman. Glad to see your name on steel again, brother." Work came steady, then strong. Within 3 months, I hired back half my old crew, men who'd seen the truth for themselves once the audit reports went public. Evan's trial made headlines for a week, then vanished into the endless churn of scandal. He pled guilty to wire fraud, received 18 months, and restitution orders that would take him a lifetime to pay. Mom visited him once a month. I didn't. We'd said everything there was to say in that boardroom. But sometimes, late at night when the yard lights hummed and the city quieted, I'd think about that day at the funeral, how humiliation can sound like applause when it comes from the wrong mouths. I'd think about how my father's voice, recorded years earlier, had saved more than a company. It had saved my sense of worth. I kept the recording, not out of bitterness, out of gratitude, proof that truth, once spoken, never really dies. One afternoon, Angela stopped by the new shop to film a follow-up piece. "You ever regret going public?" she asked, camera rolling. I smiled. "Not once. My brother thought power came from who talked loudest. I learned it comes from who leaves the right paper trail." She laughed. "So what's next for Ward Restoration?" "Nothing fancy," I said. "Build honest, pay fair, leave everything stronger than you found it." After she left, I walked the perimeter fence, checking the welds myself. The sun dipped low, setting the metal aglow like lines of fire. In the distance, the crew's laughter mixed with the whir of machines, the sound of something rebuilt the right way. I stopped at the sign one last time, running my fingers across the painted letters. Ward Restoration. Dad would have approved, maybe even Evan, once he remembered what the name was supposed to mean. I chose not to hate him anymore. Hate's just free rent you give to someone who never earned it. I'd rather build something worth owning. That night, I sat at my desk filling out the last page of a clean ledger. No debts, no lies, no missing funds. Just the closing line. Balance complete. Legacy restored. Then I shut the book, turned off the lights, and let the silence feel like peace instead of emptiness. Because I finally understood, I wasn't my father's shadow or my brother's rival. I was the man who made both their lessons count. I choose the work. I choose the truth. I choose me. What would you do? Drop your story and subscribe Revenge Stories Men U50 USA.